They watched him die, not from a distance, not as a rumor whispered through crowded streets, but up close, with their own eyes, as the sky darkened and the ground seemed to hold its breath. His name was Jesus, a man many believed would change everything, and a man others feared would dismantle everything they had built. By the time his body was taken down, there was no debate left, no argument to hold on to. The soldiers confirmed it. The witnesses scattered, and those who loved him were left with a silence so deep it felt permanent. He was gone, buried behind stone, guarded, sealed, finished, or at least that's what everyone believed, until something happened that no one, not the authorities, not his closest followers, not even those who wanted him erased, could explain. 3 days later, the tomb was opened, not by grieving friends trying to say goodbye, but in a way that raised more fear than comfort. The stone had been moved, the seal broken, and the body was gone. At first it sounded like confusion spreading faster than truth. But then the stories began. One person claimed they saw him walking just outside the city. Another said they spoke with him clearly, as if nothing had happened. And then more voices followed, each telling the same impossible account. Jesus was alive. The same man who had been executed, confirmed dead, and buried under guard was now being seen, heard, and followed again. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand why this shook an entire region, you have to understand who Jesus was before that moment. He wasn't born into political power, and he didn't come from wealth or status. He grew up in a modest environment, surrounded by ordinary people who understood hardship more than comfort. But what made him different wasn't where he came from. It was how people responded to him. Wherever Jesus went, people listened, not because he demanded attention, but because something about his words stayed with them long after he spoke. He talked about hope in a way that felt personal, like he understood what people carried when no one else did. He challenged authority, not with force, but with truth that unsettled those in control. And over time, his influence grew beyond what anyone expected. Crowds followed him, not out of obligation, but because they believed he represented something real in a world filled with uncertainty. But not everyone saw him that way. For those in power, Jesus wasn't just a teacher or a voice of comfort. He was a problem. His words questioned systems, challenged long-standing authority, and drew attention away from those who had spent years building control. The more people listened to him, the more dangerous he became in their eyes. And when influence reaches a certain level, it doesn't just get noticed, it gets confronted. That's when quiet conversations began behind closed doors, when decisions were made that would eventually lead to his arrest. It didn't happen in broad daylight. It wasn't transparent or fair. It happened at night, quickly, with just enough force to make sure there would be no resistance strong enough to stop it. The arrest was sudden, but what followed moved even faster. Jesus was taken in, questioned, and judged in a way that left no room for defense. Those who had once stood beside him disappeared into hiding, afraid that being associated with him would place them in the same position. By morning, the outcome had already been decided. The execution wasn't just punishment, it was a message, a warning to anyone who might consider stepping out of line or gaining too much influence. When Jesus was led to that place, the crowd wasn't unified. Some watched in silence. Some believed justice was being carried out. And others couldn't even bring themselves to look. When it was over, the confirmation was immediate. There would be no doubt left behind, no space for rumors to twist what had happened. The soldiers made sure of that. His body was removed, inspected, and prepared for burial. A respected man stepped forward to place Jesus in a tomb that had never been used before. Ensuring there would be no confusion about where he was laid, the stone was rolled into place, heavy enough that no one person could move it alone, and to remove any possibility of interference, guards were stationed outside. This wasn't just about securing a burial, it was about making sure the story ended exactly where those in power wanted it to. But stories don't always follow the path they are given. In the hours after his burial, something began to shift. Not in the open, but among those who had followed him closely. Fear had already taken hold. They stayed hidden, speaking in low voices, replaying everything that had happened as if trying to find a moment where things could have gone differently. Some questioned whether they had misunderstood him. Others wondered if everything they believed had just ended in a way they never expected. And then there were those who remembered something he had said before his arrest, something that didn't make sense at the time. Words about returning, about not being gone forever. At first, it sounded impossible. Even now, it still did. But when everything's been taken from you, even the most unlikely idea can begin to take root. By the third day, the weight of uncertainty had settled into something heavier than grief. Early that morning, a small group made their way toward the tomb. They weren't expecting answers. They were simply trying to face what had happened. But when they arrived, what they found didn't bring closure. It brought questions. The stone had been moved, not slightly shifted, not disturbed in a careless way, but completely rolled away. The entrance was open, and inside, the place where Jesus had been laid was empty. At first, they thought there had been a mistake. Maybe they had come to the wrong place. Maybe something had been misunderstood. But the details didn't change. The burial cloths were still there, placed in a way that didn't suggest a struggle or a rushed removal. It looked deliberate, controlled, as if whoever had taken the body didn't need to hurry. And that's when the fear shifted into something else. If the body was gone, then someone had taken it. But who? The guards were trained. The seal was official. Breaking it wasn't just difficult, it carried consequences. Anyone attempting it would have faced immediate action. And yet, somehow, it had happened. When word began to spread, the reaction was immediate. Authorities were alerted, and those who had pushed for his execution were now faced with a situation they hadn't prepared for. A missing body wasn't just a problem. It was a threat to the version of events they had worked to establish. If people began to believe something extraordinary had taken place, it could undo everything. So, explanations were offered quickly. Some suggested his followers had taken the body, attempting to create the illusion that he had returned. Others claimed confusion, that the tomb had been misidentified. But the more people looked at the details, the less those explanations made sense. Then came the accounts that changed everything. It started with one person claiming they had seen Jesus alive. Not as a distant figure, not as a shadow, but clearly. At first, it was dismissed. Grief can shape what people think they see. But then another person came forward, and another, and soon it wasn't just individuals making claims. Groups of people began saying the same thing. They had seen him. They had spoken with him. Some said they even touched him, confirming this wasn't just a vision or memory. What made it harder to ignore wasn't just the number of people, but the consistency in what they described. They weren't speaking in vague terms. They were describing real interactions, conversations that carried the same presence as before his death. And perhaps the most striking detail was the change in those who had once been afraid. The same individuals who had gone into hiding were now stepping forward, openly sharing what they had witnessed. There was no hesitation, no sign of uncertainty, and more importantly, no clear benefit for them. Speaking out didn't bring safety. It brought risk, attention, and consequences they could have avoided by staying silent. As time passed, the movement that had nearly disappeared began to grow again, stronger than before. The story of Jesus didn't end at the tomb. It moved beyond it, reaching places it had never reached while he was alive. People who had never met him began to hear about what had happened. And for many, the question wasn't just whether the accounts were true. It was why so many were willing to stand by them, even when it cost them everything. Because if this had been a constructed story, it would have required a level of coordination and sacrifice that didn't match who these people were. And that leaves us with the question that has never fully gone away. If the body was taken, where is it? If it was a misunderstanding, why did the accounts remain consistent even under pressure? And if what they claimed actually happened, then the story wasn't about a man who died. It was about something that didn't end at the crucifixion, but began after it.